Hello, we have finally made it to the distance formula. This is what we have been leading up to the last few lessons, and I am going to share my screen with you, and hopefully I can get it to work. Once again, I apologize for my voice, still not back. Okay, so here is the distance formula. We're going to go through some things right now. I picked two random points. I put them on a set of axes. It really doesn't matter what points they are. What we did yesterday was we dropped a vertical line and a horizontal line. We made a right angle, okay? So that we knew that this line here, the distance, this was our C, this was our hypotenuse. Then what we forced you to do was we found this distance right here. So this distance was the absolute value of the difference of the x values, okay, because we had the same y value. This distance right here was the difference between the two y values, the absolute value. Okay, we subtracted them and then we took the absolute value. And remember, we could subtract them in any order and then take the absolute value, we got a positive. So that was our A and our B. And then what we did is we used the Pythagorean Theorem to find out what C was, okay? Here's what we're going to do. At the very end, if you remember, we ended up with C squared equals some number, and we took the square root of each side. So we never really messed with this C squared. So what we are going to do, we are going to take the square root of both sides first. Yes, we are. So we are going to take the square root of this side. So I took the square root of the whole side, and then I took the square root of C squared. Okay? I think you follow me there. Okay. So the square root of C squared, we know what that is. That's C. Here, what we're going to do, we are going to put in for A this absolute value. I'm going to make this a little bit longer here. So this is the absolute value of the difference of our x's, and then we're going to square it. We're going to add to that right here the difference of our y's. I know some of you don't like my arrows. The difference of the y's squared. Okay, so I'm going to change one thing on you now. Instead of having absolute value signs here, I'm going to turn them into parentheses. And be thinking about why I can do that. Okay. So the reason I can do that is when we found this distance up here, we took the absolute value. And we took the absolute value because distances always have to be positive. When we plugged it into our Pythagorean theorem, we always squared it. So it doesn't really matter if it's negative, we're squaring it anyway. When you square a negative times a negative is always a positive. Right now, we are one step away from the distance formula. C is now going to be changed to a letter D. And what does D stand for? Distance. So our distance is the square root of the difference of our x's squared plus the difference of our y's squared. And you're taking the square root of that whole thing. Let's, for instance, pretend up here in our first just kind of generic example, this was 0.51, and this point was 2.7. What I'm going to do is I am going to use this distance formula and these 2 points to figure out what my distance is. So my distance is the square root of the difference of my x's squared. plus the difference of my y's squared. Okay, so my x's are 2 and 5. So it's 2 minus 5 squared. And I'm going to add to that the difference of my y's, 7 and 1. 7 minus 1. Now remember, you can subtract them in any order. Kind of goes against everything that we've been taught, that you only can subtract one way. We're squaring, so it doesn't really matter. So now we are going to start to simplify. We do our parentheses 2 minus 5, that's a negative 3 squared. 7 minus 1 is 6 squared. So I'm going to continue to simplify. That's the square root of 9 plus 36, which is the square root of 45. And you can figure that out in your calculator, rounded to the nearest tenth. That would be fine. So this would be our distance. So now we're going to go on and do one, but guess what? We are not going to draw a picture. I mean, you can. I like drawing pictures. You can get the distance between these 2 points simply by using this distance formula. So we're going to write out the formula first. Distance equals the big square root of the difference of our x's squared plus the difference of our y's squared. Now we're just going to start plugging in our numbers. So our x's are negative 2 and 0. Negative 2 minus 0 squared. Our y's are negative 5 and 9. Negative 5 minus 9 squared. Now we're start to simplify. So negative 2 minus 0 is negative 2 squared. Negative 5 minus 9 is negative 14. Here we get square root of 4 plus, I should have done 14 squared. I will do that, 196. Okay. And now we will do this square root of 200. That is our distance. And this is going to be somewhere between 14 and 15. So you could figure that out in your calculator and give that distance to the nearest tenth of a tenth. So hope you understand that. Watch this over and over again. Do the practice problems. Good luck.